Mm-hmm. Let me make sure I'm in the group. Good afternoon, ladies. Hello. This is Carla Metzdorf. I am admin to this group, Overcoming Anxiety for Stressed Out Moms Who've Had Enough. And I'm also a certified health and life coach who works with moms to overcome anxiety. As you come on today, please let me know that you're here with me. Say hello. Hello, hello. Hi. I'm coming on live today because I want to talk to you all about self-sabotage. I'm going to try to get you up in the group here. Self-sabotage. So self-sabotage and how to stop it, okay? What is self-sabotage? Why do we do it? How to stop it? So I like to start all my live trainings with some kind of definition because I want to make sure that we are on the same page. I really should silence that. There you go. I'm silenced. Good. Okay, so self-sabotage. I want to give that definition of what it is so that you understand what it is that I'm talking about. So what is self-sabotage? Self-sabotage is basically getting in the way of your success, doing something that gets in the way of your success. Does that make sense? So in other words, what could get in the way of your success? I did a post in the beginning of the week on Monday, and I talked about ways that I know I sabotage my own success. But before I get to that, what I want to do, hey Sarah, how are you? So what I want to do is I want to first talk about the brain and help you to understand why do we sabotage ourselves, all right? Because if we know that something's going to make us successful, something's going to give us pleasure, something's going to make our lives better, why in God's name would we do something, okay, to make it worse? So the only way to understand that is to understand the brain, how the brain functions, and why. I mean, you always hear me say, okay, the brain works with you. The brain and the body have a connection and they work together, okay? They work together to protect you and to make your life better. And that is true, although it doesn't always feel that way, okay? It feels like the brain and the body are trying to hurt you because we know that anxiety, depression, it doesn't feel so good, does it? So it doesn't feel like they're working together, but they are, okay? So the brain, what happens is, from the time you are a little girl, okay, things happen in life. And from those things that happen in your life, you form a belief, okay? And if nothing comes along and changes that belief, you will hold on to this thing that happened and carry it with you into adulthood. So in other words, okay, let's take something simple. Let's say when you were little, someone called you stupid. And then somebody else called you stupid. So over time, enough people have called you stupid. And other things in life haven't happened to make you think differently. So you wind up growing up thinking you're stupid because you think, well, enough people told me I'm stupid and I didn't get as good grades in school as, let's say, my siblings or my friends. So if nothing comes along and changes the things that you were told, you may grow up to think you're stupid. But see, the thing is, what you're not realizing is that as you hold on to these beliefs, you're conditioning your brain. Does that make sense? Can you give me a 1 if that made sense to you? As you come on, ladies, say hello, okay? Give me a 1 if that made perfect sense to you, all right? So, and if you're just coming on now, you can always catch the replay, okay? All right. So the brain is conditioned, all right? Now, when you're working to overcome anxiety, all right, the brain's going to learn different things, all right? The brain, all right, Shanika, hey, Shanika, just watch the replay, okay? But you're pretty early on. You didn't miss much, all right? So, the brain is learning certain things, okay? And that's why you form the beliefs. But as you're learning anxiety, okay, you always hear me say you have to make change, right? You have to change who you're being. You have to change the response that you're making in life. You have to change the mindset. You cannot overcome anxiety with the mindset that created the anxiety. You're going to hear me say that so much because it's so true, all right? But see, the thing is, the brain, as you heard me say, is very conditioned. So what the brain's going to do is, as you work to overcome anxiety and you make progress, the brain's going to go, what are you doing? You know, the brain's not going to understand that the changes you are making are for the better. Brain hates change. Remember, the brain's always trying to keep you safe. Now, I know you have anxiety, you have depression, okay, and you don't feel very safe. But the reason why you feel that way is because the brain has been working to keep you safe, and you know we've had these these misconceptions, okay, and we have this uncertainty. We're making these misconceptions about the signals the brain is sending out to us, okay. So since we're not getting the cues and building on the cues, okay, that the brain's sending, okay, our body feels that stress and we have a stress response. Is this all making sense, ladies? Give me a 2 if that made sense, okay? So when we work to overcome anxiety, we learn new tools, that we're going to use to calm everything down, right? We're going to learn new tools, new ways of being in life. But the brain doesn't understand that you're making life better. It just knows, what is this change? So in the beginning, it's going to fight you, okay? It's used to operating in a certain way. That is why I always will say, I know you've all heard me say this. If you're actually in the group listening to my live trainings or you're working with me, you've heard me say this. You need to be consistent. You can't do something wishy-washy, like halfway. The brain wants consistent work. At first, it's going to fight you because it doesn't want the change. But when you feel the brain fighting you, that's not the time for you to give up, because that's usually what you do. That is why I hear so many of you say, I quit, or this is too hard. This is when things start getting hard. I mean, and I know you relate to that, okay? This is hard. I know you're telling me to do breathing. You're telling me to use visualization. You're telling me to meditate. You're telling me to do all these things, but Carla, it's hard. It's hard. Your brain's fighting you. It's going to be hard because the brain wants what's familiar. It's trying to protect you. It doesn't understand you're making positive change. Okay? So let me give you, the brain is used to being rewarded, let's say, in a certain way. That's what a habit is. You do something, even if it's a bad habit, somehow there's a reward for that bad habit, okay? Let's say when you're stressed, okay, Some people smoke a cigarette. Now, we know cigarettes are not good for you, right? You know that. Cigarettes are not good for you. Even the cigarette companies know that, which is why there's a warning label. The alcohol companies know that. Alcohol's not good for you. That's why there's a warning label. But they don't take it off the shelves. It's still there. And it doesn't stop you from using it. Okay? Some of you don't, but a lot of people will turn to a cigarette or alcohol to comfort themselves, right? So if you're stressed out at work, you'll tell yourself, I need a break. So this is a good excuse to get up from the desk, go for a cigarette break, right? You breathe in, you breathe out. The brain, okay, because you're doing this, it's a habit. I need my cigarette when I'm feeling stressed. The brain, what it does, it associates, okay, it associates comfort with stress and the cigarette as comfort. This is what I do to de-stress, okay? So when I'm stressed, I comfort myself having this cigarette, okay? But this is what gives me like a dopamine release, having this cigarette. And we know it's a bad habit, but we do it anyway because, hey, I feel better after I have my cigarette. Okay, so this is the brain, how the brain works, how the brain functions. It doesn't matter if it's a bad habit. If you get a dopamine release from eating a pint of ice cream, how many times have you turned to food for comfort? You were very stressed out. You broke up with your boyfriend. You lost your job. Okay? Something happened. You turned to ice cream. You turned to the chocolate cake. It comforted you. Dopamine release. That made you feel better. Is it a good habit? No. Because we know what eating unhealthy foods can do in the long run. These are short-term, right? Short-term comfort. The goal, okay, is to tell the brain, to help the brain to understand we don't need these unhealthy habits to be comforted. Now, another habit, believe it or not, when I had debilitating anxiety, I remember my husband saying to me, Carla, it's almost like you're addicted to being unhappy. It's like you're addicted to these feelings of anxiety. And at first I was like, how could you say that? But you know what? I think over time, I didn't know how else to be any other way. It's like I forgot how to be happy. I forgot how to laugh and smile and enjoy life. It's like I felt this way for such a long time. I didn't know how else, I didn't understand that I could regulate myself. It's like those anxious feelings, I was starting to identify with them. Anxiety was who I was. I mean, I lived it and breathed it every day. I talked about it every single day. Who can relate to that? What I just said. Who relates, identifies with anxiety, that it feels like you're addicted? Do you ladies relate to that? Can you give me a 3? Or just say me? If you just heard what I said and can relate to that? Because it's real. It's true. But you know what? It's not you. It's your brain becoming conditioned. And you or we together can work to break that. Okay, ladies, thank you for answering that because it's true. Our brains become so conditioned, but you don't have to stay there, okay? All right, so basically, when you start feeling stressed out, having this awareness, okay, that my brain, okay, is working to protect me, okay? What can I do, all right, to comfort myself, okay? Instead of turning, anxiety is not going to comfort you, but what you're going to do is you're going to look for that quick fix. How many of you, when you feel so anxious, right away, you're like, where's my medication? I just need to pop that pill, or I need to distract myself. We use things like pills and distraction, those quick fixes, because we want that relief, that dopamine release right away. We don't like how we feel. But what if you understood, okay? You talk to the brain and you told the brain, okay? Like, if you understand how all of this goes. Hi Tracy, hi Brandy. Thank you ladies for joining me. If you understand the anxiety cycle, all right, you're going to start understanding the brain. I'm like this for a reason, okay? And as you're working to overcome anxiety, and I just lost my screen because I have to remember to move my mouse every once in a while. There you go. Woo! Okay. As you're looking to overcome anxiety, okay, you're going to learn different ways of doing things, of breaking the habit, all right? Brain's going to fight you. Remember, the brain's going to fight you, but it's up to you to have that awareness that this is going on. Because if you're not aware, you're going to be like, this is too hard, and you're going to quit. This is the time for you to dig your heels in. Another thing you're going to hear me say a lot, you need to dig your heels in. When it gets harder, it doesn't mean you quit. It means you need to dig your heels in and tell that brain of yours, we're trying to make ourselves better. This is where you take those tools that you're learning, the strategies that you're learning from me, from somebody else, and you need to be consistent. Persistent, consistent, determined. Don't give up. Keep going. The brain has to be coerced. You know, like, are you having trouble getting, someone's trying to contact me. I'm not having trouble. Maybe somebody's having trouble getting on. I don't know. I don't know what that was about. Okay. The brain, okay, is going to consistently fight you until it sees and it recognizes, wow, I mean, every day now she's doing this new thing. She's making these new patterns. Okay, now I can believe it because she did it like 20 days in a row. So it'll start going, okay, all right, let's keep going. Unfortunately, lady, science says sometimes it could take anywhere from 60 to about 120 days for that new pattern to absolutely stick. Yeah. So you need to practice patience. Sometimes we can quit cold turkey, right? But if you're going to quit cold turkey, you need to right away replace it with something new. So let's go back to cigarettes. If you're somebody who uses cigarettes to de-stress, you quit cold turkey. But now, how do you de-stress? How do you deal with that stress in your life? You're going to take something away, you got to replenish. You can't, tell the brain, okay, we're going to overcome anxiety. Okay, we're going to stop. We're going to not think those intrusive thoughts. But of course you want to replace it with thoughts that are going to more align with what you want to create for yourself, okay? But you have to be consistent. If the brain doesn't see consistency, you go back to old patterns. You go back to what's familiar. in my programs, hi Donna, I talk a lot about setbacks. How many of you have experienced setbacks? Can you give me a 4 or say me if you've had a setback? Now, a setback is like you're cruising along, you've made so much progress, right? And then all of a sudden, boom, it comes back. And sometimes it comes back worse than you had before. Why? Well, because you're disappointed, you're frustrated. I was doing good. I thought all those things I learned worked, and here I am having anxiety again. So what do you tell yourself? This doesn't work, right? You tell yourself, this doesn't work. I had a setback. Why would it come back if it worked? Ladies, it worked, for sure. You had a setback because your brain is fighting you. You're not quite there yet, all right? Just because you went a month without anxiety, okay? Maybe something stressful came up, but your brain, unless you reprogram and find a different way of dealing with the situation, the brain's going to go back to what's familiar. Is all this making sense? And now I know a lot of you came on like just moments ago. You need to watch the replay because so many important things were said, okay? When you feel anxiety, okay, you need to hold strong with that brain, okay? Feel the stress, feel the anxiety, but practice the new way of being, the new things you're learning. If you don't know what I mean by that, you need to watch my live training about self-regulation, okay? And if you're my client, I hope you're practicing self-regulation every time you feel the anxiety, okay? If you're avoidance behavior will mean what is happening will persist. Anxiety is not meant to be avoided, okay? If you keep avoiding, it's going to keep persisting, okay? What is going to give you results is the doing. Doing gets results. Avoidance keeps you stuck. Who feels absolutely stuck? Give me a 5 or say me if you feel absolutely stuck. Because I am pretty certain that you're practicing avoidance behaviors. Okay? So when you feel stress, anxiety, practice what you're learning. Okay? I want you to relieve the anxiety in that moment. And the more you feel anxiety, practice the new behavior, the brain's going to catch on. Okay? But if you keep avoiding, what's going to happen, okay, you're going to find some relief in the moment. I mean, taking medication, does that give you relief? Well, yeah, you can find relief through medication. Distraction, will that give you some kind of relief? Yeah, it will. But they're all short turns. You get that dopamine release, you get that short term release. But guess what? You're not changing anything in the brain, okay? The brain says this is short term, but it still will go back to old habits, old patterns, and what is familiar. But if you take action, consistent action, make it a new habit, the old patterns will go away. Who understands this? Who needs clarity with anything that I just said? And if you just came on, please don't ask me to repeat it. You need to watch the replay, okay? This will make so much sense to you if you watch the replay. Okay. So ladies, what do you need to do? Okay? We're going to talk a little bit more about sabotage, okay? But I wanted to explain, I gave a definition in the beginning. I just spent what am I on? I'm on for 25 minutes, about 20 minutes talking about why your brain sabotages you, okay? I just gave a whole explanation of why, okay? Now, how? How are you going to make this work? Okay, first of all, awareness. You all know awareness is my first step in everything. If you're not aware, how do you know how to make a change, okay? You have to build awareness, okay? So, expectation. Expect, as you're working to overcome anxiety, expect that this will happen. You're going to experience setbacks. Your brain is going to fight you. Just expect it. So, when things become hard, ladies, that's not the time to give up. That's the time for you to practice acceptance. Expect it to happen. Practice acceptance. Accept it, that it's going to happen. Ride with it. Be an observer of it. Be consistent. I can't say this enough. You're not going to overcome this if you are not consistent. Ladies, I don't want to call you out, but it concerns me, okay? How many of you have asked me for my live trainings? You want to be tagged in my live trainings. You want my resources. And then when I reach out to you, have you found the opportunity to watch those trainings, to review my resources? You tell me no. Now, I'm not trying to judge or make you feel bad. What I'm trying to do is point out to you. That leads me to believe you're not being consistent. Because if you didn't find time for it, what else are you doing to cope with your anxiety? Okay, so you didn't have time to watch my live training, but are you doing something else? If you're not being consistent, if you're not staying the course, if you don't keep reinforcing something different to rewire the brain, you're always gonna go back to old habits, old patterns, to what's familiar. Again, is this making sense? Give me I don't even know what I'm up to, 5, or say absolutely or yes if this all made sense. Okay. So, the one thing that I do with clients is that I tell them that they have to clear the clutter. In other words, you got to remove from your life what makes it hard to overcome anxiety. If there is something keeping you from overcoming, you need to deal with that. You need to deal with that. The next thing I need you to do is to celebrate your wins. Every Saturday in the group, I post, report your wins. Now there's 4,000 people. 4,000. Wow. Yeah, 4,000 members I got. I don't hear from 4,000, right? I hear from 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 tops. I don't hear from a lot of people. There's a reason for that post. When we're suffering from anxiety, we're extremely negative. Very, very negative. You need a reason to start focusing on the positive. I want you to focus on your wins, because when you don't celebrate your wins, when you don't recognize your progress, you don't make it count, and you keep focused on the anxiety, guess what? That anxiety will persist. I want you to get in the habit of looking for wins. Does that make sense, ladies? Again, give me a yes Tell me that made perfect sense, Carla. I want to hear that resonated with you. Does that make sense, ladies? All right, well, thank you for the thumbs up. That will work too. Okay. So, ladies, everything that I just talked about is why the brain fights you. Okay? And why maybe you don't recognize the progress because the brain's fighting you. Okay? But you need to take control. Okay, thank you for the yeses. Now, when I work to overcome anxiety, Monday I put a post in about how I learned over time that I was sabotaging myself, okay? Sabotage, again, is the things that I did that kept me from my success, okay? I mean, there are so many things that I did, but I didn't recognize them in the moment. You know, I didn't know anxiety well enough. It's as I learned about anxiety, as I overcame anxiety, and I looked back and I went, oh my gosh, I had to get out of my own way. You don't realize until you start understanding anxiety, and making changes, how much you're in your own way. Okay? So I'm just going to go over this briefly. The things that I did to sabotage myself. They are in the group in the post I did Monday. But I just want to put them in this training in case you did not see the post, or, you know, somebody's watching this on YouTube. But these are things to look for that are probably getting in your way. You're sabotaging yourself, okay? First of all, anxiety is a lack of trust, right? So when you start not trusting yourself, trusting in God, okay? You're not, it's going to be hard to overcome anxiety, which is a lack of trust, if you don't have trust. You don't believe that you have that capability to get results, to do any of this. So I had to build my confidence in myself, work my relationship with God, and understand that there was a higher power helping me through this. When I started trusting, boy, was I seeing results. Also, I wasn't living present, because anxiety is about living in the future. Okay? Living in the future, what ifing, and what ifing all day long. What if this? What if that? Focusing on my intrusive thoughts, focusing on how I feel. Or if you're living in the past, basically what you're doing is, why you're getting anxious is because you're remembering things in the past, going, what if this happens in the future? What if that thing that happened in the past happens in the future and I can't cope with it? And believe it or not, that could be your anxiety, right? Because how many of you had a panic attack in a store, right? You had this bad panic attack and now you don't want to go back to the store because you're saying, what if I go back in the store and you have a panic attack? Something that happened in the past, what if that happens to me again? And now this is my future. What if? Anxiety. When I learned to be present, I got, not that I'm always present, ladies, but the thing is, I know anxiety well enough that even if I do live in the future, you know, I understand where my mind is going and how to take it back to the present. And if you want to understand more about that, there's live trainings all about that. Everything I'm talking about, there's like live trainings about being present, about trusting. The other thing is living in expectation. If you're going to live in expectation, see, I live in such expectation of anxiety. Like I said, going to the store, then what if this? You expect to be anxious because you're starting to identify it. identify with it is what I should say. You expect to think, feel, and act always with those anxiety feelings. Have those anxious thoughts. You're so used to them being there. It's like, I don't know any other way anymore. So you constantly look for it. You get up in the morning and it's like, am I anxious? Oh yeah, there it is. Instead of letting those feelings just be and letting them pass, you look for them. There they are. When are they going to go away? And you get disappointed and you fear them. So the other thing that led me, I just have a list of them because I'm going to forget. Impatience, okay? So when we're anxious, we become extremely impatient. Because let's face it, we want this gone. We don't want it gone tomorrow or the next day. We wanted it gone yesterday. And this is why we turn a lot to quick fixes. Because we're in pain. And the thought of, you mean I have to wait to make a change? And you're telling me that change may not stick for like 3 months or 4 months from now? And then the fear comes in. That's hard. There goes the brain. That's hard. How are we going to do that? I can't do that. And you become very impatient. We want to control everything. We want everything in our timing. But it doesn't work that way. The only control you have in life are your thoughts. Although anxiety makes you feel like you have no control, you do have control. And, as a client, you will learn how to take back control of your thoughts. But otherwise, there are live trainings that you can go to all about thinking, intrusive thoughts, and how to get back in control. However, you have control of your thoughts, and your thoughts affect how you feel. Your thoughts and your feelings together give you an experience. It's all about your thoughts and how you respond to life. Those you have control over. Everything else needs acceptance. Whatever you don't accept becomes a problem. So the other thing that really kept me stuck because I kept sabotaging myself was that I was so focused on the problem, I wasn't focusing on the solution. So I focused on my anxiety so much, okay, that I identified it with it so much, okay. I let my emotions dictate anything that I did. So I was doing things, but I didn't understand the mind-body connection. I didn't understand things back then. So, I would do breathing. I would try to meditate. Yeah, and within seconds of trying to meditate, what's for dinner, or how am I going to get through this, or how, all these thoughts would come through my head and I couldn't focus. Lack of sleep, my depression kept me from doing it properly. But having the formula that I just gave you in this live today of how to deal with sabotage when the brain's sabotaging on you, now you can try to get focused, okay? Focus more on the solution than the problem. Does this making sense, ladies? Are you all relating to these things that I'm saying? Do you see yourself in this? The other thing is all these thoughts I was having, intrusive thoughts, okay? And if you don't know, okay, intrusive thoughts are normal. They really are. People who aren't even anxious have intrusive thoughts. Human beings, every human being has intrusive thoughts. The problem with being anxious is that those intrusive thoughts linger and they become quite scary because we're thinking with more of an emotional mind, emotional brain, thinking with emotional mind, okay, the amygdala. And when you're anxious, that front cortex, that front mind is kind of turned off, where all the logical thinking takes place. So now, okay, you have these thoughts, and instead of telling yourself, like somebody thinking with the logical mind's like, what the heck is this thought? Like, and like you could get it out of your mind and you just go on with your life. What a stupid thought I just had. Oh, and I go on with my life. Somebody who's anxious, why am I thinking that? Why did I just think that? Why would I think that? What's wrong with me? If I'm thinking that, it must be true. Is that something I'm going to do? That is so scary. And we think these thoughts, and it persists. It keeps going and going. I believed my thoughts. And I let these thoughts keep me in the anxiety cycle. Keep me from my happiness, from my joy, from enjoying life. I was so focused on my thoughts and how I felt. I didn't understand that mind-body connection. I stood stuck. So my attitude sucked because of that. Because I became so negative. Not that I was a bitch. I don't mean that about my attitude. I mean like negative attitude, whereas like we would get together for lunch and all I would talk about is my anxiety. Like nobody wanted to hang out with me anymore. Why? Because everything was about how I felt. Carla, how do you feel? Well, do you have about 3 hours? Yeah, let's talk about my anxiety. Everything was about anxiety. I wasn't fun anymore, right? I was the Debbie Downer. Who wants to have a pity party with me? Misery loves company, right? My attitude, like who wants to hang out with the negative girl that's going to talk about her anxiety all the time? Who's going to just start crying? Because I cried all the time. It was hard. I was not enjoying my time with my family and my friends. And my friends, my family, yeah, they tried to be supportive, but like, it was kind of like, Carla, can you just change already? You could tell that they were getting frustrated with me. Like, enough already. So ladies, what really, 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 really became necessary, which is the last thing that I could think of. I mean, this is enough. That really, interrupted my well-being, me overcoming anxiety, was the implementation, okay, part of all of this. Now, I push implementation on you. I push it on you. Why? Because if you don't implement, ladies, you can't come out of the anxiety cycle unless you use implementation. Information is just information, ladies. You can watch this video 5,000 times. I don't care. If you don't implement anything that I tell you, you're going to stay stuck. You might be mad at me for talking to you this way, but I am being truthful because I want you to get results. I'm telling you how it is. And right now, your brain is probably going, turn her off. Don't listen to her. Implementation. As I said before, I came up with a lot of excuses to not implement. It's too hard. Listening to my brain. Okay? And I'm going to go over saboteurs really quick. Those saboteurs, I listened to them. My brain did not want me to be hurt. It was protecting me. It wanted me to succeed. But when I say your brain wants you to succeed, when it's trying to protect you, it doesn't understand that you're in pain. So it's trying to keep you where you are until you tell it that there's something better going on and let's make a change. So if you're not consistent, you're going to stay stuck. Implementation. Very, 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 very important. I didn't know what implementation was. So what is implementation? Well, I don't have a live training on it. I didn't do a live training about implementation. But, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I should. But implementation is basically what you do, okay? It's taking the facts that you're learning, the insights you're learning, and doing something with them. It's actually taking action. Taking action. Without action, you do not get results. So, quickly, is everything clear, ladies? Anybody needs any clarity? I'm going to go on. I'm going to talk about the saboteurs. Another post I made in the group was talking about the saboteurs. But I want to put them in this live training again, because just in case you're watching this on YouTube and you're not in the group, I want you to understand there are saboteurs, okay? Now, what are saboteurs? Saboteurs are basically, the voices in your mind. I hear voices, right? Nobody wants to say that out loud, because if you say out loud, I hear voices, people are going to be like, what, is she crazy? We're going to put her away. But those voices in your head, okay, are the brain talking to you, trying to keep you safe, okay? Yeah, Tracy, you want to get better now, and you're making progress, but I'm still in this. Yeah, give yourself some grace. Keep going with what you're doing. Watch the beginning of what I said, Tracy, because I think you came on late. You need to rewatch this. You know what? It wouldn't hurt if even if you were on with me in the beginning, maybe rewatch this. Repetition is very, very, very important, okay? So, the 10 saboteurs, the judge, okay? I'm not gonna linger with this, all right? With my clients, I go over this and we get into this, but for the purposes of you understanding, okay, that your brain is going to fight you, and this is how it will fight you, okay? Judging, okay? How many of you are beating yourself up over mistakes, right? How many of you, okay, you become very obsessed about what you do. You become fixated on negativity. You're judging yourself in everything that you do. Like I said, you got to get out of your own way. I had to get out of my own way. You have to get out of your own way. Right? Okay. Victim. We have that victim mentality, right? We think that it's about us. Everything is about us. We draw attention to ourselves, receive attention through our emotional problems. We become the victim of everything. Like, oh, poor me, woe is me, so to speak. Okay? And you could feel very alone and isolated because you think it's all about you. Everything is about you. You receive that attention through your emotional behavior, through what you do, okay? So in other words, you become the victim of everything to gain attention and affection. Now, if you're somebody who is a pleaser, in other words, you will do things to gain acceptance and affection. So you'll do anything to make somebody feel, let's say, flattered. What you got to do to rescue them. You'll do anything to make someone like you, and get their approval. Okay, so somebody who's restless, a saboteur too, is called restless. Now, somebody who is restless, okay, they're very easily distracted, all right? So in other words, they're very impatient. They want everything to happen now, okay? They seek elsewhere for comfort. They like they're impatient, and if they can't get it from, let's say, A, they'll go straight to B. They want that instant gratification, let's say. They look for what's going to get them what they need. Does that make sense, ladies? So that is like the restless, like this, like, so your brain is going to fight you, for that distraction. What can we do now for that dopamine release that I spoke about in the beginning of this live? Okay. So if you're hypervigilant, okay, so hypervigilant is another saboteur. So basically, when you're hypervigilant, you are really focused on that fear, on that worry, on that anxiety. You're very worried. The dangers of everything. You can't ignore. I don't want to say ignore, but it's hard for you to let go of your fear, and all you could do is focus on that worry. Okay, what can go wrong? You have a lot of doubt about what is going on in the present time, if you can cope, if you can deal. You're very skeptical, cynical, and life is just full of danger. Okay? So that's basically, a lot of us feel that way. Okay? Hyper achiever. Okay? This is somebody who needs validation from the outside. Okay? You kind of, you want okay, how do I say this? So, to feel important, to feel worthy, you need other people. You like it when other people give you like the compliments, okay? Or to feel successful, you need to hear it from other people. So happiness is achieved through your success, through your achievement. So you want other people to see you achieve so that they could be like, hey, you're doing great. Like, you love to get those compliments. Does that make sense? My husband doesn't play my affirmation game, so I've learned that trying doesn't get the results. I can't read. Wait a minute. Trying doesn't get the results I want, so I'm learning to look within. So is that in the response to my validation? To trying to get validation? Okay. So, yeah, thanks for the heart. I think that came from you, Julie. So some of us, we need that validation from others. Our happiness comes from achievement. We need to constantly have success so that it makes us feel better. It makes us feel important. Okay. Thanks, Julie, for letting me know. So hyper-rational. Okay. This was hard to explain. So hyper-rational is basically you're somebody, okay, the brain constantly, and this is hard for somebody with anxiety because, as you know, when you're anxious, you shut off the rational part of the brain, right? But somebody who's hyper-rational needs everything, I guess, explained to them. They need to be rational. Everything needs to have meaning. They want that insight, that validation, that understanding. It pains them to not understand. They have to understand. They have to analyze everything. Does that make sense to everybody? So somebody who is hyper rational can come across as uncaring or arrogant because they don't stop. Does hyper rational mean irrational? I don't think so. Maybe I'm explaining this wrong. Because maybe they will have irrational behavior, Julie, but I think hyper-rational means a person needs to rationalize their behavior, and they don't stop until they understand what it is they're experiencing and why. Like, they have to know how things work. Does that make sense? So they analyze everything. Like, my husband does this. My husband's an engineer. So right there, that tells you a lot, okay? He has to understand how everything works. He'll ask you a billion questions that you get frustrated and you get impatient with him because it's like, will you stop asking me why? You know, it's like, oh, because he has to understand. He has to understand, right? Does that make better sense, Julie? But somebody who understands everything can come across as arrogant because they'll be like, oh, I know, I understand, because they take the time to understand. I don't know. Okay, that makes sense, Julie. It's your brain's way of protecting you because, and I guess in a sense, it's your mind saying we have to know more. We have to know more. We got to keep going. We have to know more. So, okay, as long as that makes sense. Okay, see, I don't have that type of brain. I mean, I guess I do, because when I was working to overcome anxiety, I mean, I wanted to understand everything about anxiety, okay? So, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I come across as arrogant because I know anxiety. But I think when somebody knows a lot about something, I mean, they could come across as arrogant, you know? But anyway, another way that is a saboteur is, it's called the controller. So in other words, now this has a lot to do with anxiety because, as we know, we want to control everything. Everything. We want to take control. Okay? And we want things to go our way. We want it to happen when we want it to happen. And it's not happening when we want it to happen. That's why we're what-ifing all over the place. We wish it would happen the way we want it to in our timing. And it's not. So, hence anxiety. Okay? We want to take charge and we can't. But you can take care, take charge of those thoughts. You can take charge of how you're responding to things. But you can't control other situations and people's actions, what other people are thinking and how they're responding. You can't. So hence you stay in anxiety, right? So people who are controlling, sometimes what we do is, we can make other people feel, I guess, that's why I try to control, because I can't control myself. You can control yourself. Because you can't control. Okay, I think I'm reading it wrong. That's why I try to control, because I can't control myself. Okay, you can't, okay. When you learned you can control your thoughts, you can control your response to things. No, you can't control how other people are reacting, but you can control who you're being in any given situation. And when people see that you're being calm, cool, collective, let's say, it will help them to respond differently to things, if that makes sense. Sometimes, you're not going to be able to control, let's say, as mothers, right? We get very worried and concerned about our kids, especially if our kids are driving. Let's use that for example, right? My kid is getting in the car. Us mothers, we don't like it when our kids drive in a car. We sit there, we say a couple of Hail Marys, please return our kids safely back to us. But you have no idea how your kids are driving or what the person next to them is going to do. You can't control that. All you can do is control who you're being in that moment. Say a prayer. Worrying isn't going to make them safe. Say a prayer. If you believe in prayer, say a prayer. That's what you can control. Do something that's going to help. Okay? So somebody who has a mind that is full of anxiety, wants to control, you're going to have lots of anxiety, lots of impatience, okay? The stickler, okay? The stickler is like, things have to be a certain way. They have to be in a certain order, in a certain way. They're basically perfectionists, right? But these people are very highly critical of themselves, all right? They have very, very high standards. I know because I live with somebody like that. Going back to my husband, the engineer. Okay? He's very much a perfectionist. Very high standards. Everything needs to line up and mean something. Okay. The avoider. Now, again, somebody with an anxious mind, okay? You're going to understand this one too, okay? Because the avoider, we don't like anything that's hard, anything that's difficult, anything that's unpleasant. We're going to take immediate actions to make things feel better for us. Quick fixes. We love quick fixes. Oh, yeah. So, we might procrastinate. We're going to do a lot of procrastination. A lot of distraction. We might deny how we feel. Because we don't want to deal with those feelings. They're unpleasant. We might lie to ourselves and others about how we feel. So these are saboteurs. Okay, these are the voices in our heads that are basically speaking to us, trying to, squash those things that we're doing to overcome anxiety. Because the mind, the brain, does not understand that the change, which it doesn't like, which is going to help us, which is going to make us better, the change is needed. It doesn't understand that. So it's going to make you react and in a way that you're not going to, get those results that you want. So when you understand who you're being in any given moment, you can take the time to overcome all this. You can talk to yourself in a way, oh, there I am being a perfectionist again, or there I am, procrastinating again. Here I am trying to take control again. I'm avoiding again. That's why awareness is so, so, so important. When you understand all this, you can take control. Use all of this information, implement it. Ladies, you're going to overcome this. If you're still like this 6 months from now or a year from now, that's because you're not implementing. You're not understanding this information, how it works, and you're not implementing. And, I would love to work with you to help you to implement these things so that you can have success. Anxiety is temporary. It is temporary. You don't need to have anxiety for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. My mother, to the day she died, suffered from anxiety. She probably had anxiety from the time she talked about it from childhood. My mother was 80. So, yeah. So for almost 80 years, my mother had anxiety. She let it control her life. And I find that sad. So ladies, watch the live trainings. Take those resources. Use them to your advantage. If you have problem with implementation, please contact me. Let's talk about it. Let's find a way to work together. Let me help you. I am somebody who's been through all this, has overcome it, and I can help you overcome. It can be hard to do on your own, but it's not impossible to do on your own because eventually I did it on my own. Yes, I sought out professionals, but they didn't teach me all this. All these things that I just told you about, I learned that from studying anxiety. And some of it didn't come really sink in until as I was getting results. And I was like, oh, now I understand what sabotage means. I only read about it, but then as I was getting in my own way, so to speak, I didn't know what that meant. What do you mean get in your own way? How do I not get in my own way? Of course I want to overcome this. I was not getting it. Work with me. I'm going to show you the way. Otherwise, watch my live trainings over and over and over again. Sometimes once is not enough. Until you understand how to implement, once is not going to be enough. I had to reread and because I didn't have all of this, I read books and I had to reread passages. I can't tell you how many times before it sunk into my head. And sometimes I have so much in my head about anxiety, I get so wait, what was that? That's why I have to have an outline in front of me. Yes, I understand this, I know this, but you gotta understand, ladies, I have so much in my brain about this that sometimes I've done a live without something in front of me and I go back and I go, oh, did I say that? I should have said that. Why didn't I talk about that? I should have. So I make sure I have something in front of me because I want you to get all the information. But listen, if I had a script in front of me, ladies, I would be robotic right now. I'd be like, and this is how you overcome anxiety. Trust me. I was on YouTube once and I found a woman. What she was talking about sounded very interesting. So I was listening to her, but you can totally tell she was reading off a piece of paper. And I felt bad for her because it was so noticeable. So yeah, you can tell sometimes if I'm reading something or whatever. But hey, listen, I just, I want to get everything right. And it's not that I don't understand because I do. It's, I just don't want to miss out on anything that I say. Thank you that you love my videos and you find them helpful. Thank you so much, Tracy. But ladies, that's what I got for you today. Okay, so we talked about what is sabotage. Why do you sabotage? What is that brain thinking? What is it doing that it's making you sabotage? I talked about what made me sabotage, and we talked about the brain. What are the saboteurs? What are some examples that the brain does? they have names that is making you sabotage. So we discussed a lot today. Are there any questions? I realize some of you came on, came off, came on, came off. But even if you're watching the replay, any questions, let me know. And I will always answer them and get back to you. I could, message you, text you, whatnot. But otherwise, ladies, if there's no questions, and I just lost the group because I have not been, yeah, there you go. If you have any questions at all, let me know now. Oh, I just got a lot of hearts. Thank you. I don't know who sent them, but thank you. Thank you. I love you too. But any questions, please now. Otherwise, I'm going to go. And again, I went over my time. One of these days, I'm going to do like a 20-minute live. But no, I don't hide anything. I give it all to you, ladies, except for the implementation, which I need to work with you. It's so hard to teach implementation like this. Like I need to really work with you and understand your situation to help you implement. So with that said, ladies, I don't see any questions. So have a wonderful day, the rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Take care, ladies. Be well. Bye.